Illegal immigration is in the news today. We'll talk about a biblical view of immigration on the Gary DeMar Show. Hello and welcome to the Gary DeMar Show. Once again, I'm Joel McDurmon, filling in for Gary DeMar for the next few days. I would like to talk about the subject of immigration, and particularly a biblical view of immigration, which is not much discussed. Of course, the issue is in the news pretty boldly right now because of the law that was passed, so to speak, actually simply just enforced, resolved to be enforced in the state of Arizona, in which a person who is pulled over for any regular reason or stopped by the police for any regular reason that anyone else might be stopped and cannot give identification, no driver's license, no papers of any sort to document their identification, as any normal person would have to do, then they can be suspected as being an illegal immigrant and can be processed to check for that. And this has caused an outcry among the liberals and as well an outcry from the Christian socialists, whom I have had time to deal with in my writings and some of my talks several times, particularly the organization Sojourners, whom I have not followed to see what their particular outcry to this particular case is, but they have, based on their name of course, have been big proponents of immigration and basically always take the side of even the illegal immigrants, although they won't call them that, for, of course, liberal reasons. You know, these people come into the country, they become dependents upon government in many different ways. That guarantees votes for liberals. And of course, there's outright Marxism in many of these people coming over. There are many videos on YouTube of La Raza movements. This is a radical organization that has a front organization that looks like it's merely humanitarian. And it's widespread, but it really is, there's a radical bent of literal radical Marxism mixed with racism. And these people believe that they're going to take over the country through subverting the laws, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's a whole different issue. What needs to be voiced in the midst of all this is not only a conservative response to it, what are our laws and how do we deal with this? We also need to look, in fact, we especially need to look from a biblical point of view. What does the Bible say about immigration? And this is important because the liberals, especially these Christian socialists, like the organization Sojourners headed up by Jim Wallis, whom I have critiqued in my book, God versus Socialism, will inevitably turn to Leviticus 19. And Leviticus 19 is an important chapter. And in that chapter, Leviticus 19, 34 and 33 and 34, actually to the end of the chapter, let's just read that and see what it says. Beginning with verse 33, "When a stranger resides with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong." Now this is the New American Standard Version. "The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. You shall do no wrong in judgment, in measurement of weight, or capacity. You shall have just balances, just weights, and a just ephah and a just hin," which are different weights. "I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. You shall thus observe all my statutes, all my ordinances, and do them. I am the Lord." Particularly the verses of the stranger. You shall treat him, it says, as a native among you. And our socialists and our Christian liberals will jump on that verse and say this means that any immigrant in your land you shall treat according to the same laws as the people, as the citizens. And that means the same benefits, the same social benefits, the same education, the same health care now, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And to the person who doesn't know the full biblical Old Testament background, who is not familiar with the studies, and is certainly not familiar with the Hebrew underlying the English here, that may sound persuasive, and it may sound like something we need to deal with. But we need to get behind what's really being said here. What is the stranger? Perhaps stranger is not the best translation here, and this has been pointed out in many places. There are particularly 3 different Hebrew words used throughout the Old Testament, particularly in the Torah, to make reference to people who are moving, who are not citizens. The words are simply ger, nekhar, and zar. They all mean different things. The word ger is by far the most prevalent. It is the most recognized in the law, and it's the one used here in Leviticus 19. And as we'll see in a minute as we go through this study, it actually refers to someone who is a resident alien, who is there legally and is documented, who is identified, and who is shown that they can work. The other words, nekhar, zar, refer to either, it can refer to foreign invaders, it can also refer to people who are simply traveling through the land here for a very temporary time, or people who are here just on business, visiting, and as we'll see, those people get treated differently or left out of the protections of the laws in the Old Testament. So these are distinctions. This is the primary distinction that needs to be kept in mind. There is a distinction between someone who moves here with the intention of living here, making it their new home, and abiding by the laws, which means laws of identification, of course, too, and paying taxes, if it's applicable. I wish it weren't applicable, but it is. And the distinction between that person and someone who is here merely temporarily, or who is here subversively, or is here to become simply a mooch. Now, there's a great book that has come out on this. This is by a man named James F. Hoffmeyer. He is an Old Testament scholar at the University of Toronto. This was published by Crossway, and the meat of the book has a very detailed study of immigration, especially in the Old Testament, since he is an Old Testament scholar. But he does include a chapter in the New Testament, and the book overall is very good. It's called The Immigration Crisis: Immigrants, Aliens, and the Bible. And he makes this distinction in the Hebrew, and he's very clear. He's a good writer. He's scholarly, but this is not an in-depth scholarly book. It's a very clearly written and understandable book. It treats the issue very well. There are some places I would critique, especially when it gets to his view of social benefits and applications of the Torah today, and hopefully in tomorrow's show or in Friday's show, I will get to that issue and be able to critique that from my viewpoint. But overall, the meat of this book is very good. And there are a couple places in the Scripture he draws our attention to see how immigration worked even in that time, and how the Jews handled it as they had to be immigrants or were traveling through different parts of the land. One of those, a very clear instance of the distinction and how immigration was handled at the time, is in Numbers chapter 20. Now, this is after the Exodus, of course. The Israelites are wandering through Sinai, heading towards the Promised Land. And in chapter 20, verse 14, they have come up to the boundaries of the kingdom of the king of Edom. And from a city on the very border of Edom, this is what it says. From Kadesh, Moses then sent messengers to the king of Edom. So they didn't just go into the land. They didn't go in and establish themselves and make themselves at home and expect to be treated well. They sent a delegation to the king. Thus your brother Israel has said, you know all the hardship that has befallen us, that our fathers went down to Egypt. We stayed in Egypt a long time, and the Egyptians treated us and our fathers badly. But when we cried out to the Lord, he heard our voice, sent an angel, brought us out from Egypt, and now, behold, we are at Kadesh, a town on the edge of your territory. We're at your border. Please let us pass through the land. We shall not pass through the field or through vineyard. We shall not even drink water from a well. We shall go along the king's highway, not turning to the right or left until we pass through your territory. Edom, however, said to him, you shall not pass through us, lest I come out with the sword against you. But again the sons of Israel said to him, we shall go up by the highway. And if I and my livestock do drink any of your water, then I will pay its price. Let me only pass through on my feet, nothing else. But he said, you shall not pass through. And Edom came out against him with heavy force and with a strong hand. Thus Edom refused to allow Israel to pass through the territory, and so Israel turned away. Now, this is not an application of Old Testament law, but it is a great example of how, number one, the Israelites respected immigration and the territory they were entering. They asked permission just to pass through not even to go in, not even to stay there. And they said, even if we take anything, if we eat or drink anything, we'll pay for it. So there's this tremendous respect on the part of the Israelites for other people's land. We'll have to get to more of this tomorrow. It's a great study. I suggest you get the book, The Immigration Crisis. And thank you for watching me today.
For more related to this topic, check out God versus Socialism, a biblical critique of the New Social Gospel. You will find it at AmericanVision.com.